Fleet Week to look back on the 220th anniversary of the Coast Guard, which took place August 4th, 2010. The U.S. Coast Guard is one of the 5 armed forces of the United States and the only military organization within the Department of Homeland Security. The Coast Guard protects against hazards to people, maritime commerce, and the environment. It defends our maritime borders and saves those in peril. The Coast Guard responds quickly to disasters to restore the nation's waterways. It helps sustain the maritime transportation system, which carries 99% of U.S. imports and exports. When called upon, the Coast Guard defends the nation at home and abroad alongside the other armed forces. The U.S. Coast Guard commemorated its 220th anniversary on August 3, 2010 at Federal Hall National Memorial in New York City. Federal Hall, the nation's first capitol, was chosen as a venue since it is here within the walls of the original hall that Alexander Hamilton, the first Secretary of the Treasury, established a revenue cutter service in 1790 and the Coast Guard was born.
My name is Pagan. I'm a Chief Warrant Officer at the Coast Guard Vessel Traffic Service here in New York. I am the electronics manager for the Port of New York, New Jersey. And Alexander Hamilton, the father of the Coast Guard, he is one of the most famous founding fathers of our nation. But in regards to the Coast Guard, he wrote on Federalist Paper number 12 of the need of the nation to have a revenue cutter service guarding our coasts, which became, it is the predecessor of the United States Coast Guard. Since then, not only did he ask for 10 ships to be built for the sole purpose of guarding the ports and collecting revenue, he also created the first instructions for the commanding officers of those ships of how to go about manning those ships and how to interact with citizens of the United States.
With us is Captain Linda Fagan, Commander of Sector New York, to talk more about the responsibilities of the Coast Guard.
We're here today on the 220th anniversary of the Coast Guard's founding by Alexander Hamilton. We are a multi-mission maritime military service, uniquely configured in this country, in fact, in really around the world, have an ability to execute law enforcement missions, but at the same time we are a military service, and it allows us just an incredible amount of flexibility and opportunity to enforce the laws and regulations of the United States in the coastal environment and port communities. And we, the Coast Guard, are really proud of what we're able to do and the service that we're able to provide to the American public every day.
And the role of the Coast Guard?
Yeah, and the role. So the Coast Guard, we do everything from search and rescue, law enforcement, drug interdiction, ice breaking, aids to navigation, environmental protection and response. Probably our 2 most recent and most visible responses. You see all of what we're doing as far as spill response in the Gulf right now, in the Deepwater spill. And if you remember back to the earthquake in Haiti, and you saw how quickly we were able to get Coast Guard assets in there to fulfill a humanitarian mission and help support the people of Haiti in those first couple of days of critical need. So it's a really diverse set of capabilities and missions that we bring to bear, and that we execute on every day, 24/7, every day of the year. We're out there and ready to respond. Our motto is Semper Paratus, always ready, and we're there at a moment's notice to do that.
And just to end this, what are some of the problems or risks here in New York City as you see this port?
Well, certainly what has really struck me as I've been here now is how central water is to New York. It's obvious it's a series of islands here, and certainly the waterways are used quite intensively to continue the commerce and the just allowing the engine that runs the city to continue. So anytime you have just a a lot of volume of people, of traffic, of risk. It brings with it its challenges. I'm very encouraged by the level of maturity of the different committees that exist here with our other federal agencies, state agencies, city agencies, and port partners. So there's a great ability to be able to get together, talk through what some of those challenges and issues are, and make sure that we are all managing risk and are in the best position possible to respond should another big incident occur. And in a big city, we just need to be ready for that every day, because you don't know what's going to happen this afternoon or tomorrow. And so certainly as one of the key federal agencies here, we are engaged and leaning forward every day on continuing that discussion and making sure that the Port City is as protected as possible.
The ceremony coincided with an art exhibition by the U.S. Coast Guard's art program, also known as COGAP. 41 paintings by 28 artists were on display, all depicting the unique contribution the Coast Guard makes to the nation in its roles as a military, humanitarian, and law enforcement organization.
My name is Karen Loew. I chair the Coast Guard art program, also known as COGAP. We are all volunteer artists from all over the country. We have artists that are in Alaska, in Florida, and several here in New York City, where I am. We depict the Coast Guard, their ships, their crew in action. We are the historians of the United States Coast Guard, and they are our true inspiration. Our best work comes from what they do for all of us. To join the Coast Guard art program, you are already a well-established artist working in a very representational medium. We take watercolor, pastel, acrylic, oils, works on paper. It's not so much for sculpture or photography. There are limitations on what the Coast Guard can handle and store. This is a very active show. These works will go on to various other venues. This is a working art. It's here today at Federal Hall, National Memorial in New York City, and weeks from now it could be in a maritime museum in Maine or Chicago. Collection 2008 went to the Netherlands in celebration of the 400th anniversary of the discovery of the Dutch in Manhattan. So we've had our international shows as well. The Coast Guard art program is open to everyone in the United States. You apply through the Coast Guard and send in examples of your work and an application. They then are reviewed as far as quality of your work. That's very important to us. The art that is here today was juried by a special committee. There are 3 people that make up that committee, one of which is a member of Sector New York of the Coast Guard. They want to see that what we do accurately represents what they do, that our details are correct. Another juror is from the Coast Guard Community Relations in headquarters in Washington, D.C., and they want to be sure that it's something the collection can use. This is not static work. This is working art. They want to be sure that it tells the story that they want out there to promote and to educate the public. It's a great morale booster for the Coast Guard as well. So the images are very important, what we paint. And the third juror is a member of the Salmagundi Club who sponsors the program. This is generally our president, and her job is to look for the quality of the work. We want quality work to represent the quality of the Coast Guard themselves.
We were thrilled today to have the Coast Guard celebrate their 220th anniversary here at Federal Hall National Memorial right down on Wall Street in the heart of New York City, because not only do we have a history with the Coast Guard through Alexander Hamilton, who had an office on this site back when it was the nation's first capital, but the National Park Service continues to have a working relationship with the U.S. Coast Guard through many of our seaside parks, including locally Gateway National Recreation Area, and because we're all very concerned about the safety of visitors to those waters. And also we share some office space at Fort Wadsworth, which is part of Gateway, and also Governor's Island National Memorial, which is just off the tip of Lower Manhattan on Governor's Island, was a former Coast Guard installation after it had served as an Army base for many, many years.
To learn more about bringing Coast Guard art to your hometown, call the Coast Guard Art Program Coordinator at 202-372-4643 or go to their website at uscg.mil/art. To find out information about joining the Coast Guard, check out the Coast Guard recruiting website at gocoastguard.com, or to locate a Coast Guard recruiting office by phone, please call 1-877-NOW-USCG. I'm Kristal Hart reporting from Federal Hall National Memorial, New York City.